Are you ready to learn about one of the biggest bets in business history? We'll be exploring the story of how FedEx, now a household name and a major player in the logistics industry, came to be. But this isn't just a story about the success of a company. It's a story about a founder's unwavering belief in his vision and the willingness to risk everything to make it a reality. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we'll be discussing the challenges that FedEx's founder, Fred Smith, faced and the innovative solutions he came up with to overcome them. So sit back and get ready to discover the incredible journey that took FedEx from a small startup to a global leader in package delivery. First, let's talk about how FedEx came into existence. Fred Smith was the one who had the bright notion that it would be more time and cost-effective to send vital but smaller things by airplanes. During this time, he was a student at the university. He penned a thesis on the subject, which would later serve as the basis for his business. FedEx was established by him in 1971, with the first funding coming from a bequest of $4 million, as well as loans and equity investments totaling $80 million. The airline originally began operations with only 8 aircraft, yet they were already reaching 35 different locations. The concept was quite pricey, and right from the start of the company's operations, a whole system had to be developed and implemented. On top of that, in order to spread the word, there were significant financial investments necessary for advertising as well as direct mail operations. In a little over 2 years, the firm racked up losses of $29 million. In 1975 alone, the company posted a profit of $11.5 million while recording sales of $43.5 million. When it was urged by the investors that Fred Smith should be fired from his position, the president of the firm stood by his side. Both the president and Smith collaborated on the development of more efficient delivery schedules. As a direct consequence of this, FedEx volume surged and the firm quickly started turning a profit. The FedEx Corporation's portfolio continues to expand over time. In 2019, the total worth of an organization's assets was estimated to be around $54.4 billion US. The corporation underwent a transformation in preparation for the 21st century. At this time, there are 5 significant enterprises actively working: FedEx Express, FedEx Ground, FedEx Freight, FedEx Custom Critical, and FedEx Trade Networks are some of the services that fall under this category. If you look through the past of FedEx, you'll see that the corporation was in the red for many millions of dollars for a little more than 2 years. This was mostly the result of the high expense of petrol and the generally pricey character of the enterprise. So what steps did FedEx's founder, Fred Smith, take to prevent the firm he founded in the 1970s from going bankrupt? This is the point in the history of FedEx that things start to get interesting. Even though the firm was experiencing monthly losses of more than $1 million, no one was willing to provide them with further funding or invest in the company. The situation became so precarious that FedEx reserve cash was down to only $5,000 by the time it was resolved. At this point, the corporation did not even have enough money to pay the charges of the gasoline for the transport that would take place the next day. Smith made one more pitch to a potential investor, and when that attempt was unsuccessful, he went to Las Vegas to play blackjack with the remaining $5,000 in the company's funds. It is true that the company's founder and current CEO has let his gambling talents determine the future of the business. And it was successful. He multiplied the $5,000 into $27,000, which was sufficient to pay for a week's worth of operations at the firm, and he invested it. The top management of the corporation questioned Fred Smith about his behavior in this matter. He just responded by saying that if he hadn't done things in this way, there never would have been a firm to begin with. Smith was able to utilize this setback as inspiration, and he was soon able to get $11 million in capital for the firm, despite the fact that the $27,000 wouldn't have been enough to keep the business operating for an extended period of time. FedEx had reached a point of financial stability and was generating a profit of $3.6 million in 1976. That is really insane. Fred Smith has a net worth of $3 billion, whereas FedEx is now valued at over $30 billion. Even if it seems ridiculous to say so, FedEx's gamble paid out in the end. Now let's take a look at some interesting facts regarding FedEx and Fred Smith. On April 7, 1994, a FedEx aircraft came dangerously close to being taken over by a former worker named Auburn Calloway who had only lately been let go. Calloway's original goal was to intentionally crash the jet into the FedEx corporate offices. However, the crew on board was able to bring the Calloway to a halt, despite the fact that they suffered significant injuries as a result of their efforts. Surprisingly, FedEx has only lost a small amount of aircraft up to this point, and the crash of one of its flights has only resulted in the loss of life for the pilots a single time. The accident occurred on March 23, 2009, when one of their flights was landing in extremely windy conditions. The plane was seen to bounce a couple of times on the runway before the wing clipped the ground, which led to the plane flipping over and catching fire, which ultimately resulted in the deaths of the pilots. Another fact is that Frederick Smith was a member of the Skull and Bones organization, as well as a member of the same fraternity as George W. Bush when they were both students at the university. Smith ultimately turned down the position of defense secretary in Bush's administration twice. The first time due to his own health, and the second time during Bush's second administration due to Smith's terminally ill daughter. Smith and Bush became friends in college, which ultimately led to Bush offering him the position of defense secretary in his administration. Smith ultimately turned down both offers. Do you know Smith had a strong friendship with John Kerry? The two were able to spend a lot of time in the air together since they both enjoyed flying. When Smith came out in support of Bush over Kerry in the presidential election of 2004, one can only imagine the discomfort that ensued. Another amazing fact about Fred Smith is that Smith also served in the Marines for 2 tours of service in Vietnam, during which time he was awarded a Silver Star, a Bronze Star, and 2 Purple Hearts. He was finally dismissed from the Marines with the rank of captain in 1969. When Fred Smith was just 4 years old, his father passed away unexpectedly. His grandfather started the Smith Motor Coach Company in 1925, which was eventually acquired by Greyhound and became the source of his father's riches. It was at this period that he established the Tuttle House network of eateries. The Tuttle House restaurants were a nationwide diner-style restaurant chain that focused mostly on breakfast fare. These establishments were comparable to Denny's of today in that they offered a similar menu. However, what set each establishment in this chain apart from the others was the absence of conventional tables in favor of a single long row of stools arranged around a bar table. It should not come as a surprise that the majority of the orders were for takeout. In the early days of this chain's operation, guests paid for their meals by placing cash in a collection box on the way out the door. This was yet another one of the establishment's distinctive characteristics. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of FedEx. We hope you've enjoyed learning about the company's incredible story and the lessons we can all take away from it. From its humble beginnings as a small startup, FedEx has grown into a global powerhouse thanks to the vision and determination of its founder, Fred Smith. His willingness to bet the entire company on a revolutionary idea and his perseverance in the face of challenges serves as a testament to the power of believing in yourself and your dreams. We hope that this video has inspired you to chase your own goals and aspirations, and that you'll join us again for more engaging content in the future.